Hey everyone, I hope you're well. This is the story about what if Naruto could manipulate shadows. Before we start, please subscribe to the channel and like the video as well. So without any further ado, let's start the what if. Konoha, 3 days after the invasion. It was 3 days after the invasion of the Sand and Sound Shinobi upon Konoha. The losses hadn't been overwhelming, but there was still a large amount of damage to the city itself and the populace. They were taken by absolute surprise, so a decent amount of the civilians were slaughtered. Luckily it wasn't too bad, only a few hundred deaths. What was more important was the fact that a good number of Anbu and Jonin were killed by the rampage of the giant snakes and the Ichibi before Jiraiya managed to seal the beast's chakra and end the threat. There was quite a large amount of property damage as well. A good amount of the residential district was destroyed. The walls had been breached badly by the summoned serpents, and they were getting repaired immediately since it was crucial to restore the village's defenses and secure the country's borders. They had to make sure that they appeared powerful, otherwise Iwa, Kyomo, or some other village might start getting ideas about attacking in hopes of finishing the job soon as started. There had also been a good amount of death among the shinobi forces, a decent amount of the older genin, though the rookies were unharmed. There were a few dozen Chunin killed and a good amount of Jonin and the Anbu were also killed. Luckily none of the really powerful ninja were killed except for Gecko Hayate, who was killed by the Suna Jonin Baki. Of course, none of these losses were more detrimental than the death of the Sandaime Hokage. This was very bad for more than one reason. The first reason was the obvious one: they lost the most powerful shinobi in the village and a brilliant tactician. There was also the fact that losing a Kage was very important symbolically. The Kage was the strongest ninja in your village. To have him killed by a smaller village did wonders in bringing down the village's reputation, and that reached the ears of potential clients, and that affected the village's economy. There was also the matter that there were no suitable replacements to take up the Hokage mantle. Sarutobi didn't select a Godayame before he died. Under such circumstances, it was up to the village council to select the next Kage. Usually this would be horrible because the Konoha council were a bunch of power-hungry bastards for the most part that would end up bickering over who became Hokage based on their allegiance to the individual council members. Luckily the attack triggered the survival instincts of the corrupt Slavs, and they made an unbiased decision when they selected Jiraiya for Hokage. Then something horrible happened when Jiraiya said no thanks. They selected Tsunade as Hokage, but they selected Jiraiya to retrieve her. Jiraiya was in a bad way, but he would recover before too long. The main reasons behind choosing Tsunade were twofold. One was because she was one of the Sannin, but the major reason was because they needed a powerful medic to heal Uchiha Sasuke. Sasuke's leg had been horribly wounded during his bout with Naruto. Every single muscle tendon in his left leg had been severed, and the bones in the leg had been broken in no less than 6 places in addition to numerous hairline fractures. He was really fucked up. Tsunade was the only person that the council knew who could possibly heal the young Uchiha, and being the Uchiha lovers they decided to force Tsunade to become Hokage and return to Konoha. If she didn't return when Jiraiya gave her the offer, she would be marked a nuke-nin. To add to things were Jiraiya's injuries. They would heal well enough and he would come out of the hospital okay, albeit a little more scarred, but that meant that there would be a decent amount of time during which there would be no Hokage, and that is why the shit was starting to hit the fan. Without a Hokage, the council would have free reign in Konoha until a new one was chosen and inaugurated. The Sandaime, while flawed, still managed to keep the council in check and prevent them from growing more powerful than himself. It wouldn't have happened at all if he stood up to them earlier, but he did his best. Now that Sarutobi was gone and there wouldn't be a new Hokage for some time, the council would have more than enough time to secure powers that they didn't have before, putting the next Hokage into the position of a figurehead. Hell, if they weren't in a state of emergency and in need of powerful ninja and a good medic, they would probably postpone the selection of a Godayame indefinitely, taking over the village themselves. Kage troubles aside, there was one other problem, or rather two. After getting reports from several sources and accounts from several ninja and biased civilians who saw what happened, Uzumaki Naruto and Mitarashi Enko had been declared missing nin. Supposedly they had murdered a pair of innocent Anbu and escaped into the forest, leaving the village behind, most likely to join Orochimaru or another of Konoha's enemies. Most were happy to be rid of the snake whore and the demon brat, and they were planning to send Oinin after them the moment they had the ninja to spare. But that wouldn't be for some time. A good chunk of the shinobi force were lost, and those that remained were either cleaning up the mess or dealing with politically significant missions and dangerous missions to keep relations with other villages and countries good and make themselves look strong respectively. Rogue ninja could breathe easy for a little while. They had all the spare ninja they had on standby to go with Jiraiya once he recovered to convince or force Tsunade back to Konoha. Since Oinin were made up of the powerful Jonin and Anbu, they wouldn't be able to send out Oinin squads without significantly weakening themselves until Tsunade became Hokage, at the very least. Team Guy was helping with the cleanup of the residential district, getting rid of the rubble and such. They had taken Naruto's desertion hard, all three of them. With Niji it was hard to tell, but he was struck fairly deeply by his desertion. The Hyuga prodigy didn't make friends easily, and he just lost one of the two that he had. It wasn't easy to simply move on after something like that, and he had been slightly more depressed lately. Lee took it harder than Niji. To him Naruto seemed happy enough, he was powerful, and although they had some rather severe differences, the miniature guy clone believed that they had some kind of friendship going. Now, he wasn't really sure what to think. Someone who was only a week ago a powerful ally is now an enemy to be killed or captured. It wasn't easy to go from one to the other, it was almost impossible. Right now what Lee wanted to do was find Naruto. Not to kill him for revenge or something like that, but he wanted to know why he left their team and their village. Guy took it the hardest. He hadn't been his normal, youthful self since the announcement of his desertion. He knew that Naruto had never had the happiest of childhoods. Hell, he knew that Naruto had the worst childhood in Konoha's entire history. But he never showed any sign that he would want to turn rogue. He was always aloof and uncaring, but he never showed anything other than complete loyalty. He blamed himself for Naruto's desertion more than anybody else. If he talked to him more, perhaps if he tried harder to get the boy to open up to him, maybe things wouldn't have turned out this way. Or at least that was what the green-clad taijutsu master thought. Other teams took the news much better, depending on how you looked at it. Most of the other rookies had nothing but fear regarding Naruto as an enemy. Shino took it the best, but he takes everything well. You could tell an Aburame that his favorite puppy died and you would get nothing more than a calm, monotone, "Thank you for the information." The only ones that showed any satisfaction from it were Sakura and Kakashi. Kakashi said that he long suspected the demon would turn on them and that he should have been killed when he was young and weak, while Sakura just said that he probably left out of shame for hurting her, Sasuke-kun. She almost never left the Uchiha's hospital bed either. Sasuke himself was in a bad way. His left leg was all but ruined. He needed an expert medical ninja to even begin to hope for a good recovery. The doctors had set and healed the bones so there were no structural problems, but the muscles still needed to be reattached to the bones. If it wasn't done correctly, then the muscles could be put in the wrong places or attached incorrectly to the bone. You can only imagine the number of problems that would arise should something like that happen. He probably would have been complaining or brooding if he wasn't comatose. Jiraiya took a look at the seal Naruto left behind one day when they brought the Uchiha to him for that exact reason. And in Jiraiya's own words, that thing is a fucking masterpiece. In Jiraiya's report on the seal, it was deadly and dangerous as hell. The thing looked simple and geometrical enough, nothing complex, which would indicate a dangerous and powerful seal, but that was deceiving. The entire mark was made of small seals formed of tiny micro-scratches seared into the skin. While a section looked like a straight line, it was an immense tapestry of markings, each with different meanings and purposes. According to Jiraiya, the thing must have taken years to complete based on its complexity. There were quite a number of dangerous effects that not even Jiraiya knew the full extent of. One apparent effect was disturbing sleep or forcing nightmares, as Sasuke hadn't actually rested in quite some time. He was always tossing and turning in his sleep, muttering into the air. Another nasty effect was death. There were several seals built into it that would kill the person it was applied to if any one of them was activated, and they were all activated in different ways. The only one that Jiraiya was sure about was the one that activated if the seal was tampered with. Removing or modifying the seal in any way was impossible if they wanted to keep Sasuke alive. There was another effect that occurred at the death of the victim. Anyone who died with the seal applied to them would have any Kage Genkai sealed and inaccessible to those that would attempt to dissect the body looking for information on such Kage Genkai. The entire seal was one bad piece of work and would remain untouched until Jiraiya could dissect and analyze it completely and hopefully find a way to safely remove it, which, judging by the man's condition, wouldn't be for some time. Hinata was rather quiet for a while. She cared for Naruto and never got to tell him anything, not that many knew. She was very depressed, not to the point of suicide or anything, well, almost to that point. She wanted to find Naruto and find out why he left and confess her feelings for him that she never got to tell him before, and that goal gave her resolve to increase her training, to become powerful enough to be recognized and admired by him instead of the other way around. She thought that it might help her chances of getting him to return the feelings she had. Who knows what could happen? Jiraiya was struck badly that the son of his student had deserted the village. He thought that maybe if he actually spent time in the village looking after his godson instead of peeping in women's hot springs, perhaps things would have turned out differently. He couldn't actually say anything regarding him though. Despite his presence in the village, he couldn't ever find the boy no matter where he looked for him. He took it easier than most, but harder than some. It was mostly regret for not managing to fulfill his student's last request than any amount of compassion for the boy himself though. He mainly focused on healing so that he could go after Tsunade. The sooner they got the Hokage position filled and got things back to normal, the better. According to the doctors and their constant attention, he would be able to leave the hospital in 3 days. It was amazing how much people will do for you when you are an extremely strong ninja in a time of crisis. But he wondered, in that hospital bed, he wondered where the errant Jinchuriki and no longer loyal snake summoner could have disappeared to and what they were planning. Naruto was devious, he would give him that. There was no way in hell that he would be on his own for long. When Konoha found him, he would have allies that they would have to deal with as well. There was another thing on Jiraiya's mind. The strange men or things that attacked him in the forest and put him in his current condition. He didn't know anything about them, and hadn't heard any rumors about people like them. He could only guess and keep his ear to the ground about anything like that happening again. There was a chance that they were working with Orochimaru, but it was unlikely. He didn't really know what to think of them, but he could speculate and theorize as he tried to get back on his feet. He had a score to settle with the one with the black sword, at the very least. He thought for a second that perhaps they were related in some way to Naruto, but it was less likely than them working with Orochimaru, and he dismissed the notion from his mind. With Naruto and company. Naruto and the rest had set up shop in the Gobi's X-lair. Since they didn't want a gaping hole for a door, Naruto set up a way to prevent the unwanted from entering. It was a powerful genjutsu that he worked together with Yukino to create and put it over the hole. Naruto mixed in a mesh of shadows within the illusion in order to give it physical presence. The only way in was by wearing one of Naruto's black gems. They would be able to walk through the wall like it wasn't even there. To anybody else, it would be a simple mountainside. The zombies, since they contained some of Naruto's power, were able to pass through freely as well. The same went for Naruto himself. Of course, there was a security measure put in place to prevent a stolen jewel from being used to enter the place. He took each jewel that he gave and encoded it with chakra, keying it to a certain individual. The results were twofold. The first effect was that if anybody not keyed to the jewel touched it, save Naruto himself, the jewel would explode. The second result was that they always knew where it was, being able to sense it at any distance, and would be able to tell when one of the gems wasn't theirs. They had also searched around a bit once Absalom broke down the back wall, allowing them into the Gobi's former home. The place was just one big cave, nothing special about it or anything. But as they journeyed inwards, they found an immense space. Apparently the mountain was partially hollow or something because they couldn't see the ceiling. Naruto just said, "This is where we will be creating the special class zombies." He also informed Temari and Enko of what was going on, the zombies, his method of creating them and the operation in general. They had been surprisingly calm, very much so when they found out that it was 4 of the generals who put Jiraiya in the hospital. Temari was just amazed while Anko glommed him and said, "Trust Naruto-kun to be able to put a Sannin in the hospital." Mind you, they weren't thrilled when they met Ryuma, the only general to be awake all of the time, as he was the head of the general zombies, second in command to Absalom. Flashback no Jutsu. The mummified swordsman looked at Naruto and the 2 ladies in the hallway. After a moment the undead things spoke, "So very beautiful, and I only have eyes for the beautiful. Of course, I'm a mummy, so I don't have any eyes." Then he vanished and reappeared behind the trio. Anko and Temari were shocked by his speed, but Naruto was unsurprised, expecting something like that. Then the mummy continued, "Sorry, dead joke. May I see your panties?" A moment later there were twin calls of hentai, and a loud noise like a body being slammed into a wall. Flashback no Jutsu Ki. Of course, their meeting with Absalom was similar to it, only it took a little bit longer. He wasn't known among them as Perv Salim for nothing. The guy was almost as perverted as Jiraiya, though it wasn't as obvious. Naruto was currently sitting in a comfortable chair in a small library, looking through the newly stolen Taki bingo book, Kusa's arch-rival, looking for good targets among the ninja, people that really stuck out as something extraordinary. The stronger the body and shadow, the stronger the zombie created with them was. He was mainly looking for powerful Kusagakure ninja, which were abundant in the Taki book, not that there were many to choose from. They were close by and he didn't feel like traveling much, otherwise he would look elsewhere for good choices. He was pretty much playing the waiting game at the moment, waiting for Orochimaru and Jiraiya to seek out Tsunade. Who else would they make the Godayame, and who else could heal Orochimaru's injuries? Nobody, though Hogback could probably do something about the snake's arms. Regardless, he was planning to make Orochimaru pay for trying to kill him with that pawn Kabuto, and even if he didn't have anything against him, the snake would still be on his list so that he wouldn't interfere with anything later. He had several villages to take over after all, and he didn't want any interference from a snake in the grass. His plan was at this point simply to destroy Konoha, Orochimaru, and the Akatsuki. At least that was the grand strategy. He would have to prepare quite a bit before taking on an entire village, undead army or not. But he was patient and willing to take care of the other 2 targets first. Right now, Orochimaru was already taken care of, he just needed to wait for the snake to make his move regarding the Uchiha, the rest would take care of itself. The Akatsuki would be a bit more difficult to take down, but he wasn't ready to take them on yet anyway. He closed the book and put it away, not finding any particular ninja that stuck out. The only S-class shinobi of Kusagakure was the legendary Kusa no Zetsu, who was a member of Akatsuki. The current leader of the village was high A rank, but he wasn't alone in that category. The only reason he led the village was because of his leadership skills. He turned to a nearby portrait depicting a WITC hunt and said, "Get Yukino, Haruka, and Absalom in here immediately." Most people would expect nothing to happen, but the Hung Witch merely nodded before unhooking the noose that bound her, walking out of the picture and leaving a bunch of angry people holding torches at an empty gallows. If they were animated like the witch was, they would probably feel stupid. About 5 minutes later the witch returned to her painting and hung herself again after she reported that they would be there shortly. Soon enough a knock came on the door and he said, "Enter," before the door opened and the 3 entered the room and bowed in front of him. Naruto eyed the 3 of them, from the young shy girl with short brown hair that was Yukino, to the long blonde-haired and protective Haruka, to the perverted amalgam of man and beast who was Absalom, before saying, "I have a job for you 3. The 3 of them stayed silent, waiting for their orders. Naruto was usually an easygoing guy, but this was business. Naruto said, "I want you 2, Haruka and Absalom, to escort Yukino as she searches for someone in Hai no Kuni. 2 people actually, cover our bases. You are to find where the people in question are and report back to me." Normally I wouldn't be quite so serious about this, but it is an important matter. The 3 of them nodded and Yukino asked, "Who are the targets, Naruto-sama?" Naruto smiled and said, "The more important one is Tsunade of the Sannin, finding her is much more significant. The second person is Orochimaru, find out where he is hiding if you can. I know you can't see everything Yukino-chan, but try your best. You are to return in 4 days, regardless of the outcome. Understand? The four nodded, and he said, "Go," before they disappeared. Naruto reclined in his chair and relaxed, thinking about what he was going to do when he found the two legendary ninja. If he found Orochimaru, he could put something really devious into motion, but it was crucial that he find Tsunade before either of the other Sannin did. He didn't mind if she healed Orochimaru's arms, but he couldn't have the slug Sannin becoming Hokage, and he would do his best to prevent it. Naruto smiled as he thought of what would happen when the Uchiha abandoned Konoha like he was bound to do and went to Orochimaru. That Uchiha would be the death of the snake, his seal would make sure of it. Gobi's former lair, Naruto's current lair. Naruto woke up, with Perona clinging to his side again, just like just about every other morning. What was funny was that Haku knew that she did this, and you could hear her teeth grating from the walls. Naruto looked around, and pulled a small portrait from the bedside table with his right arm, the only one he could move. He said to the zombie sealed inside, "Have Yukino and the others returned yet?" The portrait just said, "No, Naruto-sama." Naruto frowned before putting the picture down again, and then went back to sleep as Perona cuddled into him some more. He hated waking up early. The only reason he did it before in Konoha was because he had places to be. Though, he did hope that those three got back with the information soon. Kanahagakure, hospital. Jiraiya walked out of the hospital and stretched his arms. It felt good to be out of those damn hospital clothes, and back into his normal garb. No open back, and no cheap fabric either. He returned his arms to his sides, and put his mind to the job at hand. Finding Tsunade and somehow convince her to return to Konoha and take up the mantle of Hokage before those council morons could do some kind of irreparable harm. He took a look around, observing the damage that the Suna and Oto forces had managed to do during the invasion, which he was too wounded to stop. He felt some regret for the lives that were lost simply because he wasn't 100% at the time. Then he felt a sudden twinge in his side which he put his hand to. He still wasn't 100%. Those weird guys were pretty tough, and they managed to do quite the number on him. He was functional, but it wouldn't be wise to go fighting any Jonin or Kage level ninja for a while. That slash in his side was really deep, but he had no other choice at the time. The Toad Sage suddenly vanished in a puff of smoke as he headed toward the agreed upon location for him to meet the team that was to go with him. Due to his condition, the all-knowing council decided to order a few ninja to go with him to assist him in coercing Tsunade as well as guard him while he was a bit vulnerable. He wondered who he would get as he arrived at the agreed-upon training ground. There were a bunch of possible choices for who would assist him, but he didn't expect something like this. First off, there wasn't one team, there were two. Second, they were fucking Genin teams. Team 8 and Team Guy, to be specific. The miniature clone known as Rock Lee shouted out, "Finally, Jiraiya-sama has arrived. Now we can begin our mission." Jiraiya just brought the two Jonin, Guy and Kurenai, over to one side as he asked, "What the hell are Genin doing here? This isn't going to be kid stuff. If we run into enemies it will be more than they can handle." Guy just said, "Serious for once, the council ordered it. It was originally just going to be my team, but due to the issue with Naruto, they ordered Kurenai's team to come with us as well." Jiraiya sighed and said, "Yes, I get that, but why Genin at all? Why not the Jonin, or better yet Anbu, who would normally handle a job like this?" Kurenai sighed and said, "It's the invasion. Most of the Anbu and Jonin are handling high-paying missions that are crucial to keep the village economy stable and keep relations with other nations and villages stable while we pick up the pieces from the attack. As a result they stuck Genin on a mission like this." Guy nodded and said, "That pretty much covers it. Besides Jiraiya-sama, this is just supposed to be a retrieval. It shouldn't be difficult since we are just bringing back Tsunade-sama. The only reason this mission would be dangerous is the possibility of powerful enemies that are as likely to appear as they are to not appear." Jiraiya sighed again and said, "Exactly, however if enemies do show up then this mission will jump from C rank to A rank borderline S rank depending on who it is. There is a very real chance of somebody powerful like Orochimaru showing up on this one." Kurenai frowned and asked, "What makes you think that Orochimaru will show up on this mission?" Jiraiya glanced at the genin to make sure they weren't being eavesdropped on and said, "Listen, Sarutobi-sensei was killed by Orochimaru, but he went down fighting. He left certain wounds that only a very powerful medic could hope to heal. Tsunade is one of 3 or 4 people in the world that would be able to do it, and of them, one is in Suna, which Orochimaru recently betrayed, and the other 2 are either dead or in hiding. If he is going to attempt to heal himself, then he has no choice but to turn to Tsunade. That is why I requested Jonin for this mission." Jiraiya sighed before he went on, "But it doesn't matter, does it? The council ordered you 2 and your teams to come with me, and as long as there isn't a Hokage, nobody can stop them from doing whatever they want unless the daimyo takes notice. Get your genin in line. This isn't going to be an easy job, either finding her or getting her to come with us, so we can't waste any time." The 2 jonin nodded and went to get their teams ready to leave. Jiraiya looked at the memorial stone and thought, "Minato, see what your stupidity has done. I told you not to do the seal yourself, to let me or Sarutobi-sensei do it, but you ignored me, and now look what became of your son. You moron, if you hadn't done that, the invasion a week ago wouldn't have even happened. Hell, there's a good chance that Orochimaru and Naruto wouldn't have gone rogue. You fucking idiot, doing dumb stuff right until the end when I thought I had beat it out of you." He was broken from his mental ramblings as Kurenai said, "We're ready to go, Jiraiya-sama." The old man nodded and said to them all, "Right, I'm not sure how long this mission will take, but we have to try and get it over with as quickly as possible. Failure isn't an option, we have to find her. So let's stop wasting time and get going." They all nodded and Jiraiya led them at a quick pace out of the village, to the next town where they would begin their search for Tsunade, and attempt to get her to become Hokage. Some random clearing. Yukino, Haruka, and Absalom were currently using Yukino's unique abilities to find the 2 targets. Yukino was watching the multiple mirrors, each showing a different image every few seconds. It was completely amazing that she was able to keep track of them all. However, keeping track of all of that information takes an inhuman amount of focus. Normal people wouldn't have a prayer. The Rokubi Jinchuriki dealt with this by entering a trance-like state, completely shutting out all outside stimuli, focusing solely on her work, being able to do little more than speak, and if she really concentrated, to write a map, though that seriously pushed her focus. The downside of this was that it left her completely open to attack. Hence, she needed to be guarded during the vulnerable time that she was searching for the target, a protection that her good and only friend, Haruka, was more than happy to provide. Haruka was searching around the forest and near the clearing, looking for any possible enemies that would take advantage of Yukino while she was unable to defend herself. In another section of the forest, Absalom was doing the same. Yukino was without a doubt the best tracking ninja alive. If they were anywhere in her extremely extensive range, she could find them. You would have to be at least a country away before you could believe that she wouldn't be able to find you. They had been at this for over an hour now. Hai no Kuni was a pretty big country, and full of large trees that obstructed the view, not to mention the fact that they were on the far side of it. It would be a while for the shy Jinchuriki to comb through the miles and miles of forests in search of 2 specific people. Haruka sighed as she looked over at her friend, sitting in the grass as numerous tentacles of plant material swayed around her like a mass of seaweed. The tendrils could be used for attacking or defending, but the numerous pods that were released from the tendrils would be destroyed immediately. Yukino needed to move each one individually, mentally giving it commands, and they were very fragile. If her concentration broke, they would fall, break, and disintegrate back into chakra. Haruka was broken from her thoughts when she sensed a chakra signature nearing the clearing, about 5 miles away and heading straight for them. No, wait, not just one, multiple signatures, and at least one is large enough to warrant a retreat, while the other 2 I could probably handle with Absalom's help. A number of smaller ones too. A few genin squads, maybe. But who are they? She shook her head and banished the unnecessary questions. Right now, she had to get them out of there. Someone powerful was coming and she didn't want to fight them, not with Yukino in the line of fire. She turned and jumped into the clearing as Yukino smiled and jotted down a few lines of print onto the paper before her before dispelling the mirrors as the plant material vanished into the ground. She turned to her friend and said, "I found them both. Tsunade is in a town called Tanzakagai, and it looks like she'll be there for a while. Orochimaru is inside a small compound in Hai no Kuni, but it looks like he'll be moving toward her very soon." "Haruka-chan, what's wrong?" Haruka was nervous. Those chakra signals were getting closer way too fast for her liking. She said, "Yukino, a group of ninja are coming here, and fast. We need to get going immediately." Absalom jumped from the trees and landed heavily nearby. He growled, "What's the problem? We're not here to fight anyway, we just need to get out of here and get the information to Naruto-sama." Haruka looked at the beast man in shock as he said the one thing that they were ordered not to say, the name of their master, especially with enemies so close by. Her fears were enhanced when they heard a voice in the trees yell, "What do you people know of Naruto-kun?" They looked up to the trees and saw a large amount of people, led by 2 Jonin and Jiraiya of the Sannin, arranged on the branches of several trees. The one who yelled was a boy wearing a green spandex jumpsuit. Absalom recognized the member of the Sannin and of his current weakness. He growled, "Nothing that would concern you, boy, you couldn't hope to match us in any case. Move along or we'll have to reorganize your entrails." The Hyuga boy with them scoffed and said, "You fools, you will give us your information on our teammate or you will die here, it is fate. We have Jiraiya of the Sannin with us, you cannot hope to win." Haruka frowned and Yukino looked up a bit worried at said ninja. They both knew that running wouldn't do much good, they couldn't escape on foot from Jiraiya, at least not with the Jonin helping him. There was the option of using the crystals that Naruto gave them, but those took some time to use. The Kage Hoku technique wasn't anything simple. Darkness is connected but it's corrosive, it requires an expenditure of well-controlled chakra to protect oneself from the darkness on the way. Naruto had done it so often that it was made second nature to him long ago, but to them, it would take a little while to force the chakra to mold in the correct way. The bottom line was that they would have to fight long enough and buy some time for them to get out of there. If it was Jiraiya alone, they would have gone for the victory since he was wounded, but with 2 Jonin with him, victory was extremely unlikely. Haruka smirked a bit as she said, "You're the fools here, kid. We know that Jiraiya is wounded, not at his full strength. We could probably take you all down without much effort. I don't know why you would bother with Naruto-san anyway, it's not like you could get him to come with you." The spandex-clad boy yelled, "You're wrong. Naruto-kun didn't leave of his own will, he couldn't have. He loves Konoha, and always has. There must be some reason behind him leaving that we are not yet aware of, it is the only explanation." Absalom smiled, revealing his large, sharp teeth which frightened the Hyuga girl a bit. Then he said, "Standards truly have fallen, and fallen far when it comes to a warrior's mindset. Do any of them realize how the world works? Of course not, they aren't ready for it yet, it would shatter them, wouldn't it? Shatter the weak minds of your students. You will obviously not leave us in peace, so we shall have to leave you a parting gift. Haruka, Yukino, let's show these children what true warriors can do." Haruka pulled out 2 kunai, holding one in each hand as she smiled and said, "Lead on, Absalom, I'm right behind you." Yukino trembled a little as she pulled out a kunai of her own. She didn't like it when Haruka got bloodthirsty like that, nor did she like fighting. Then she hardened her heart and stared at her opponents. She didn't like fighting much, but she would do what she had to do, to protect herself and more importantly, protect Haruka. The various ninja before them tensed up as Absalom raised one hand, facing his palm towards them. Then before they could do anything else, he yelled, "Dead man's hand," and the trees were engulfed in fire. Naruto's cave, formerly part of the Hokage Mountains. Naruto was talking to Hogback in the doctor's lab. Naruto, who had gotten up about half an hour before, was discussing the results of some tests that the aged doctor had performed on Enko regarding the curse seal. "So Hogback, you're saying that the reason behind the transformation, the power boost, and everything is completely separate from the elements that give Orochimaru control over the subject?" Hogback nodded, excited a bit by some of the implications. Yes, Naruto-sama. The transformation of the body and discoloration of the skin is caused by a separate agent than the controlling element. Judging by some of the mixtures in the blood, it is probably some kind of enzyme. What the enzyme is comprised of and where Orochimaru obtains it from, however, I do not know. Naruto nodded and asked, so what gives Orochimaru the control over the person? Hogback flipped a page in the report he was holding and said, I'm not quite sure. Whatever it is, it probably isn't anything medical, more than likely something caused by ninjutsu than anything else. Whatever it is probably safe to remove it from the host body, there aren't likely to be any reprisals. Naruto nodded, and asked, so what about the enzyme? Is it possible to remove that? Hogback looked at the young man and said, I don't think so. Whatever is in the enzyme that creates the seal bonds with the person on a minute scale. It is theoretically possible to find a way to remove it all, and therefore remove the seal, but that wouldn't be a good idea. The enzyme bonds with several important systems in the body, including but not excluded to the digestive system, the nervous system, the circulatory system and the skeletal system. Removing the enzyme would cause these systems to weaken severely, more likely than not the shock would kill the subject outright. Even if it didn't kill them, it would probably leave them crippled. I'm sorry Naruto-sama, but removing the seal is far too dangerous to be plausible, even if we found a way to do it. Naruto nodded and stayed silent, thinking for a moment before saying, well, if we can't remove Anko's curse seal, then we can still remove the element that allows Orochimaru to harm or control the person, right? The doctor nodded, yes, Naruto-sama, that should be possible, though it would take me some time to find out what that element is, if I am able to find it at all. Naruto nodded and said, do so, as quickly as possible. I don't intend for Orochimaru to have any control over someone close to me, especially not someone as strong as Anko. Hogback looked at him a bit shocked, you think that she could defeat you? Naruto chuckled a bit and said, Hogback, of course not, I know that she couldn't beat me, but she could cause a lot of damage before she goes down if it came to that. Anyway, try and find out what it is about the curse seal that allows Orochimaru to control them, after that we'll work together on a way to remove that element. Hogback nodded before turning to some nearby equipment to get back to work, calling for his assistant Kageru to get some tissue sample for him. Naruto left the lab and left the doctor to his work. He walked into the dining room and found that most everybody was still missing. Hogback was at work obviously, Haruka, Yukino, and Absalom were still out on that scouting mission, and to be honest he was starting to get worried. He might have to send someone else out to find those three. The only ones that were there were Perona, Haku, and Anko. Temari was probably in her room. She had been staying there a lot, though everyone still saw her. Naruto put it down to the shock of her father and brother betraying her, and leaving her village. It just took a little while to sink in, the severity of the changes that happened in one day. He was planning to talk to her soon and get her to snap out of it. But first, he had breakfast to eat. Well, it was closer to noon, so brunch, but whatever, it was the thought behind it, damn it. Naruto sat down at the head of the table as usual. Whenever Haku and Perona were in the same room, there was bound to be tension, and it was here in spades. He was pretty sure that there was more than one catfight when nobody was around to stop them. It would explain why Perona's bedroom was covered in ice that one time and why Haku had to have a gash in her arm stitched up. Still, Anko was a bit happier than normal. He and Hogback had taken tissue and blood samples from her to form some tests on the curse seal's effect on the body, and she was told that she would be getting some results today. She was very happy at the thought of removing the seal once and for all. So, she chirped, obviously in a good mood, how did those tests turn out, Naruto-kun? Naruto looked at the woman as he poured himself some tea and said, good news and bad news, Anko-chan. Anko was taken aback a bit and asked, so what's the bad news? Naruto frowned a bit before saying, the curse seal itself cannot be removed. There might be a way, but it would probably end up killing you even if we did it right. Anko frowned a bit at that. She was rather sad and angry at the thought that the snake still had some kind of power over her even after all this time. Then she asked, more sullen than before, so what's the good news? Naruto smiled as he added sugar to the cup of liquid and said, the good news is that there is a way to remove Orochimaru's control of you through the seal. We just have to find out the exact method. It might take some time, but you'll probably be free of Orochimaru before long. Anko was stunned. She might still have the mark, but she would be free of Orochimaru? That was the best she could have hoped for after hearing that first bit of news. And it put a complete 180 on her mood. She jumped across the table and clamped her arms around his neck shouting, thank you Naruto-kun. Then she kissed him right on the lips, before letting go suddenly and blushing a bit at her own actions. Behave somewhere Toby. Then she vanished into the nearby hallway. Naruto looked at the open door before saying, well, apparently she's having a good morning. Never expected Anko to be so friendly, what do you know? The two girls were just glaring at the open door, thinking something along the lines of, how dare that harlot kiss my Naruto-kun. Naruto got up from the chair and said, right, well I am going to check on those three that I sent out yesterday. They should have been back by now and I'm starting to worry. See you later Perona-chan, Haku-chan. Then he kissed each of them on the cheek before leaving the room, snagging a bagel on the way out, leaving the two women on their own. Perona just sighed before turning her attention to the ice user before her. Haku just glared right back at her competition. Perona just said, why don't you just give up already? Naruto-kun is mine and always will be. Haku smiled a bit as she said, we'll see about that. He had to feel at least something for him to save me from death that day, and he'll eventually realize that I'm better for him than you. Perona frowned a little before saying, quietly, seriously, just why do you care for him so much anyway? Haku frowned a bit at that. Perona was never asked important questions like that. She thought for a minute and said, I'm not really sure. I just feel this deep urge to be near him, to make him happy. Maybe it's a feeling of debt, that I want to help him because he saved me or something like that. Maybe it's because he gave me a reason to live after Zabuza died. I don't know. Then she paused for a second before continuing, I don't know why I feel the way I do, but I know this much, I care for Naruto-kun deeply, and I won't let you stand in my way. I don't care if it takes me centuries to win him, but I will never give up. Perona was quiet for a minute before saying, do you really care for him so much? Are you really that determined, or are you just saying that? Haku said, very seriously, I mean that, every last word. Perona was silent for a moment, weighing her option. She was afraid that she would have to do this, but this would probably be the best decision in the long term. Fine then, if you really care for him that much, then I have a solution to both of our problems. Haku was a bit curious, she had never seen Perona like this before. What do you mean by that? The only solution here is for one of us to give up on him. I know that I'll never do that, and I know that, as much as I hate to say it, you feel the same way about him. There's nothing for it except to attempt to outdo each other in an attempt to make him like one of us and forget the other. The only solution you could possibly have is to just give up on him. At least, that's the only solution that I can see. Perona sighed again before saying, dear, sad Haku-chan, so selfish. You're thinking only of yourself, not caring at all about Naruto-kun's feelings for either of us. It's been growing more and more obvious over the last few months that he's been growing fond of you, enough so that you're encouraged to take my place at his side. However, it is clear, to me at least, that he cares for us equally, more or less. Haku wasn't quite sure what to make of this. She asked, just what are you getting at Perona? Perona sighed in irritation before looking the ice girl in the eye and saying, he cares for us equally, so if one of us eventually wins him and nabs him for themselves, they'll be sad because the one who didn't get him will be sad, and if you feel the same way that I do, then that will make you sad by extension because you don't want to see him unhappy. That's how I feel at least. Haku sighed before saying, once again, what are you getting at? Perona said, the only way for everyone to be happy is if he's happy, and the only way that it will happen is if I am happy and you are happy in whatever relationship occurs. However, we both want the same person, him, so even if one of us gets him, the other will be unhappy and drag the other two with her. Therefore neither of us can have him to ourselves for everyone to be happy and content. Are you starting to get what I am suggesting here? Haku thought about it for a second before her face lit up at the implication. Are you suggesting that we share him? Perona nodded slowly. Haku's embarrassment went into overdrive, but wouldn't that mean that we would all be in bed, together, naked? Her face flushed even more at the thought of the three of them doing things. Perona smiled and said, "What? Is little Haku-chan afraid that I would outdo her in the bedroom? You don't have to worry about that, it will happen whether you worry or not, but I don't think that he'll like you any less for it." Haku tried to find a way out of the embarrassing compromise and still salvage a bit of pride, but why would you even suggest such a thing? Perona looked at the girl in irritation. Didn't I just spell it out? If either of us hogs him, nobody wins, but if we share him, everyone wins. It's the best solution. Then Perona's face got a little red as she stuttered over this next bit, plus I've always wondered what it will be like with another girl, you know? Doesn't everyone think like that at least once? Haku looked at the blushing Perona and said, does little Perona-chan think that I will be too much for her? Or do you think that I'll shoot down your little three-way fantasy? She paused to take in one of the rare moments that Perona blushed before saying, "Well, I do have a little secret to tell about that sort of thing." Perona was a bit curious at that. "What do you mean?" Haku blushed a bit more before saying, "Well, when I was pretending to be a boy, and I said I liked girls, I wasn't really lying. It might have been an acquired taste to complete my disguise, but I found myself liking girls as much as boys one day, so the thought of sharing him isn't repulsive, just a little weird." Then she thought, not to mention hot as hell, what Perona-chan's chest looks like out of that shirt. No. Must not have a nosebleed. Looking on as Haku reigned in her inner pervert, she said, "So we have a deal? We share him and stop all this fighting?" Then held out her hand. Haku managed to suppress a bloody nose and said, "Yeah, we have a deal." Then shook the hand of the ghost princess. Far away, a pig took flight and hell froze over. The impossible just happened. Naruto just finished his bagel as he listened to the conversation from behind the door. He didn't look it, but he was happy. Who wouldn't be happy after hearing that two hot girls decided to share him? He just thought, "Top that, you old perv," before walking off. Inside the room, Perona said, "Now, we have to deal with another problem." Haku looked at her new girlfriend. She almost blushed at the thought and said, "Anko and Temari, right?" Perona nodded and said, "Exactly, I don't want to share Naruto-kun more than I have to, so I think we should put any hopes they might have to bed right now. Nip it in the bud." Haku nodded and said, "For once you're talking sense. But before then, let's just eat." Perona nodded and ate one of the eggs. "Wow, you're really a good cook, Haku-chan." Haku prevented herself from blushing at the comment and said, "Hey, Rei-chan helped you know." And it went on for the rest of the day like that. But Naruto sent out 4 soldier zombies led by Gamara in search of the missing trio of ninja. They rushed out towards where the 3 should be, in search of their allies, and any possible foes. Thanks for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, comment down below and let me know. Also share this video with your friends. I have created a playlist of this what if where you guys can find all the parts. See you in the next video.